Warrior Wing, by Sylvester SKO Fourroux. Chapter 1. The Detour. The Amtrak Silver Star rumbled through the pine forests of southern Alabama, its rhythmic clacking a metronome to Sam Parker's restless thoughts. He pressed his forehead against the cool window, watching the landscape blur into streaks of green and brown. 26 years old, honorably discharged from the Army just 3 months prior, and already he felt like a relic from another era, a soldier without a war, a man without a mission. The train began its deceleration as it approached Atmore, and Sam gathered his single duffel bag and the briefcase full of paper product samples his new employer had given him. Toilet paper, napkins, industrial paper towels, this was what his life had become. After 4 years in Afghanistan, after leading men through firefights and navigating the impossible politics of a foreign war, he was now supposed to smile and convince restaurant managers in Mobile that his two-ply was superior to the competition's. The irony wasn't lost on him. As he stepped off the train into the humid Alabama afternoon, Sam noticed the billboard immediately. Wind Creek Casino and Hotel. Exit 57. Best buffet in Alabama. His stomach growled in response. The train's dining car had been closed for repairs, and he'd been surviving on vending machine crackers since Atlanta. His appointment in Mobile wasn't until tomorrow morning. What harm could a decent lunch do? He hailed a cab outside the station, and 20 minutes later, found himself standing before the sprawling complex of Wind Creek Casino. The building rose from the landscape like a mirage, all glass and steel and promise, incongruous against the backdrop of pine trees and red clay earth. Sam had never been much of a gambler. The Army had taught him that the house always wins, but the restaurant's aroma drew him in like a siren's call. The buffet was everything the billboard had promised. Sam loaded his plate with fried catfish, collard greens, cornbread, and what the label claimed was authentic Creek Indian fry bread. He ate slowly, savoring each bite, feeling almost human again for the first time in weeks. The dining room hummed with conversation and laughter, families and couples and groups of friends all enjoying their Saturday afternoon. Sam ate alone, as he'd grown accustomed to doing. After lunch, he wandered through the casino floor, not intending to play, just observing. The lights, the sounds, the electric atmosphere, it was sensory overload after the quiet monotony of his recent life. A woman at a slot machine let out a shriek of joy as coins cascaded into the tray. An elderly man at the blackjack table studied his cards with the intensity of a chess master. Sam found himself drawn to a roulette wheel, mesmerized by its hypnotic spin. "First time?" the dealer asked. A middle-aged man with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair pulled back in a ponytail. "That obvious?" Sam replied. "You've got that look. Curious but cautious." "Military?" Sam nodded, surprised. "How'd you know?" "The posture. The way you scan the room. My nephew just got back from his second tour. You boys all carry yourselves the same way." The dealer smiled. "Welcome home, son. First, bets on the house." The dealer slid a chip across the felt. Sam hesitated, then placed it on red 23. His birthday? February 3rd. The wheel spun, the ball danced and clicked, and impossibly, it landed on red 23. The dealer grinned and pushed a stack of chips toward Sam. "Beginner's luck," Sam said, but he felt a small thrill run through him. "Maybe," the dealer said, "or maybe it's your day." It wasn't his day, Sam would later reflect, but it felt like it for a while. He played conservatively, winning some, losing some, but mostly just enjoying the distraction. The casino had no windows, no clocks, nothing to mark the passage of time. Sam lost himself in the rhythm of the games, in the simple binary of win or lose. in the blessed absence of complicated thoughts about his future or his past. When he finally checked his phone, he was shocked to see it was nearly 8 o'clock. The screen showed 7:47 p.m. and a battery warning 15% remaining. He'd been in the casino for over 5 hours. His appointment in Mobile was at 9 the next morning, and he still had to drive there, find his hotel, and prepare his presentation. Sam cashed out his chips, he was actually up $40, and hurried to the parking lot where his rental car waited. The Kia Sportage was silver and anonymous, exactly like his new life. He programmed the GPS for mobile, but in his haste, he must have hit the wrong button, because instead of directing him back to the interstate, it sent him deeper into the reservation on a series of increasingly narrow roads. By the time Sam realized his mistake, the sun had fully set, and he was surrounded by darkness so complete it seemed to have weight. The pine forests pressed in on both sides of the road, and his headlights carved a narrow tunnel through the black. He pulled over to reprogram the GPS, but his phone chose that moment to die completely. The screen went dark, and no amount of pressing the power button would revive it. Perfect, Sam muttered. Just perfect. He decided to keep driving, reasoning that any road would eventually lead to a larger road, which would lead to a highway, which would lead to civilization. It was the kind of logic that made sense in the moment, but would prove spectacularly flawed. The dirt road grew rougher, and Sam slowed to navigate the potholes and ruts. He was so focused on the road directly in front of him that he didn't see the sharp curve until he was almost upon it. He jerked the wheel, and that's when he heard a sound like a gunshot that made his combat instincts kick in before his rational mind identified it as a blown tire. The Kia Sportage lurched violently to the right. Sam fought the wheel, but the car had its own ideas. It skidded sideways, kicking up a cloud of red dust that glowed demonic in the taillights. Sam felt the sickening sensation of losing control, of physics taking over from human intention. The car left the road, and for a moment, just a moment, it seemed to hang suspended in the air. Then it was falling, tumbling down an embankment Sam hadn't even known was there. The world became a chaos of motion and noise. Sam's head snapped forward, and he felt a sharp, bright pain as his forehead connected with the steering wheel. The airbag deployed a second too late, and then everything went dark. Chapter 2. Morning light. Sam woke to birdsong and pain. The pain came first, a throbbing in his head that pulsed in time with his heartbeat, each beat a small explosion behind his eyes. Then came awareness. He was slumped over the steering wheel of the Kia, his neck cramped at an impossible angle, his mouth dry as cotton. The deflated airbag lay across his lap like a dead thing. Slowly, carefully, Sam raised his head. The movement sent fresh waves of pain cascading through his skull, and he had to pause, breathing deeply, waiting for the world to stop spinning. When he could finally focus, he saw that the windshield was spiderwebbed with cracks, and beyond it, the first light of dawn was painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. He'd been unconscious all night. Sam reached up and touched his forehead, wincing at the contact. His fingers came away sticky with dried blood. The cut didn't feel too deep, but head wounds always bled like hell. He'd seen enough of them in Afghanistan to know that much. With trembling hands, Sam tried the door. It opened with a groan of protesting metal, and he half fell, half climbed out of the wrecked vehicle. His legs nearly buckled when they took his weight, but he steadied himself against the car and took stock of his situation. The Kia Sportage had come to rest at the bottom of a steep embankment, nose first in a drainage ditch. The front end was crumpled like an accordion, and the right front tire, the one that had blown, was completely shredded. The car had rolled over a small hill and come to rest in a gully, completely hidden from the road above. No one passing by would see it. No one would know he was here. Sam's military training kicked in. First priority: assess injuries. He did a quick inventory: head wound, some bruising on his chest from the seatbelt, soreness in his neck and shoulders. But nothing seemed broken. He could walk. That was good. Second priority: water and shelter. He had neither. The car was totaled, and even if it weren't, he had no way to get it out of the ditch. His phone was dead, and he had no charger. His briefcase full of paper product samples seemed absurdly useless now. Third priority: find help. Sam looked up at the embankment he'd tumbled down. In the growing light, he could see the scar his car had left in the earth, a raw wound of torn vegetation and exposed red clay. He could climb back up to the road. But then what? He had no idea where he was or which direction to walk. He decided to follow the road. Eventually, it had to lead somewhere. The climb back up to the road took longer than he expected. His head throbbed with each step, and twice he had to stop and lean against a tree, fighting waves of nausea. But he made it. Pulling himself over the edge and onto the packed dirt of the road just as the sun cleared the horizon. Sam stood there for a moment, swaying slightly, getting his bearings. The road stretched in both directions, disappearing into the pine forest. He chose left, for no reason other than it felt right, and started walking. The morning was already warm, and it would only get hotter. Sam's dress shirt he'd worn it for his would-be meeting in Mobile was torn and stained with blood and dirt. His slacks were in no better shape. He must have looked like a disaster, but there was no one around to see him. He walked for what felt like an hour but was probably only 20 minutes. The sun climbed higher, and the heat pressed down on him like a physical weight. His head continued to throb, and he was desperately thirsty. Just when he was beginning to think he'd made the wrong choice, that he should have gone right instead of left, he saw it. A small building in the distance, with a faded sign and a single gas pump out front. As Sam drew closer, he could make out the words on the sign, the reservation dinner. The grammar was wrong, it should have been diner, not dinner, but Sam had never been so happy to see a misspelled sign in his life. The building was small and weathered, its white paint peeling in long strips that revealed gray wood beneath. But there were cars in the parking lot, 3 of them, and that meant people. That meant help. Sam pushed open the door, and a small bell chimed above his head. The interior was dim and cool, a welcome relief from the growing heat outside. There were a dozen tables, half of them occupied by locals who looked up at his entrance with expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. Sam was acutely aware of how he must look: bloodied, dirty, clearly not from around here. He chose a table in the corner, as far from the other patrons as possible, and sank into the chair with a grateful sigh. His head was still pounding, and he could feel the dried blood pulling at his skin when he moved his eyebrows. From somewhere in the back, a gruff voice called out, "Someone'll take your order in a minute." Sam nodded, even though whoever had spoken couldn't see him. He just needed to sit for a moment, to gather his thoughts, to figure out what to do next. He needed to call his employer, explain why he'd missed the meeting. He needed to call the rental car company, report the accident. He needed to see a doctor about his head. But first, he needed water. There was a napkin dispenser on the table, and Sam pulled out a few napkins. He dabbed gently at the cut on his forehead, trying to clean away some of the dried blood. The napkins came away rust-colored, and he winced at the contact. The cut was on his right temple, maybe 2 inches long. It had stopped bleeding, but it would definitely need cleaning and probably stitches. He was so focused on examining his injury that he didn't hear the footsteps approaching his table. He didn't notice the presence standing beside him until he heard the soft clink of a water glass being set down on the table. Sam slowly raised his head, and for a moment, his vision was blurry, unfocused. He blinked, and the fog cleared. And then he saw her. She was the most beautiful young woman Sam Parker had ever seen. She wore traditional Creek clothing, a long skirt in deep burgundy with intricate beadwork along the hem, and a white blouse with colorful ribbon work across the shoulders. Her hair was dark and silky, falling past her shoulders in a straight, shining cascade. But it was her eyes that captured him, dark and deep and sparkling, with an intelligence and warmth that seemed to light up the dim interior of the diner. Those eyes were currently filled with concern as she looked at his injured forehead. "Are you all right, mister?" she asked, her voice soft and melodious with just a hint of a southern accent. Sam realized he'd been staring and quickly looked away, embarrassed. Yes. I've been better. I wrecked my car. It's about a mile back, down in a ditch." The young woman's eyebrows drew together in worry. "A mile back? You walked all that way with a head injury? You should sit still. Let me get you some ice for that cut." She hurried away before Sam could respond, and he found himself watching her go, mesmerized by the grace of her movement. When she returned a moment later with a clean cloth wrapped around some ice, she pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. "Hold this against your forehead," she instructed, handing him the ice pack. "You might have a concussion. Do you feel dizzy? Nauseous?" "A little of both," Sam admitted, pressing the ice to his temple and sighing at the relief it brought. "But I think I'm okay. I've had worse." "Military?" she asked, and Sam was surprised for the second time in as many days. "Does it show that much?" She smiled, and Sam felt his heart do a strange little flip in his chest. "My brother served. Marines. You all have a certain way about you." "I'm Nancy Eagle, but most people here call me by my Creek name, Dancing Flower." "Sam Parker," he replied, shifting the ice pack slightly. "And I'm sorry to be a bother. I just need to use a phone, call for a tow truck, and I'll be out of your hair." Dancing Flower shook her head. "The nearest tow service is in Atmore, and they won't come out to the reservation. We have our own garage here, but—" She glanced at the clock on the wall. "It's Sunday. Jimmy won't be in until tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow?" Sam's heart sank. "I had a meeting in Mobile this morning. I've already missed it. My phone's dead, and I need to—" "First things first?" Dancing Flower interrupted gently. "You need to see someone about that cut. My aunt is a nurse. She lives just down the road. Let me take you to her, and then we'll figure out the rest." Sam wanted to protest, to insist that he could handle it himself. But the truth was, he felt awful. His head was pounding, his vision kept going fuzzy around the edges, and he was so tired, he could barely think straight. "Okay," he said quietly. "Thank you." Dancing Flower stood and called out to the back. "Uncle Joe, I'm taking this gentleman to Aunt Sarah's. He's been in an accident." The gruff voice from before responded, "He pay for that water? He pay for that water?" "I'll cover it," Dancing Flower said, rolling her eyes in a way that made Sam smile despite his pain. As they walked toward the door, Sam became aware of the other patrons watching them. An elderly man with long gray braids and a weathered face stared at him with open suspicion. A middle-aged woman whispered something to her companion, who shook his head slowly. Sam felt like an intruder, which, he supposed, he was. Outside, Dancing Flower led him to an old pickup truck, its blue paint faded to almost gray. She helped him into the passenger seat. He was embarrassed to need the help, but grateful for it, and then climbed behind the wheel. As they drove through the reservation, Sam looked out the window with growing interest. Small houses dotted the landscape, some well-maintained, others less so. Children played in yards, and people sat on porches, watching the world go by. It was a community, Sam realized. A real community in a way that his suburban childhood neighborhood had never been. "How long have you lived here?" Sam asked. "All my life," Dancing Flower replied. "My family has been on this land for generations, long before it was a reservation, back when it was just creek territory. My grandmother used to tell stories about the old days, before the government drew lines on maps and told us where we could and couldn't live." There was no bitterness in her voice, just a quiet sadness that Sam understood. He'd seen enough of the world to know that history was written by the victors, and the victors rarely told the whole story. "It's beautiful here," Sam said, and he meant it. Despite his circumstances, despite his throbbing head and ruined car and missed meeting, there was something peaceful about this place. Something that called to a part of him he'd thought had died in Afghanistan. Dancing Flower smiled. "It is. It's home." They pulled up to a small house with a neat garden out front. Dancing Flower helped Sam out of the truck and led him up the porch steps. She knocked once and then opened the door, calling out, "Aunt Sarah, I've brought someone who needs your help." A woman in her 50s appeared from the back of the house, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She took one look at Sam's forehead and immediately went into nurse mode. "Sit," she commanded, pointing to a chair at the kitchen table. "Dancing Flower, get my medical kit." "You," she said to Sam, "tell me what happened." As Aunt Sarah cleaned and examined his wound, Sam told the story of his accident. She listened without comment, her hands gentle but efficient as she worked. "The cut wasn't as bad as it looked," she told him, "but it would need butterfly bandages and careful monitoring for the next 24 hours. You should really go to the hospital," Aunt Sarah said. "Get a CT scan, make sure there's no internal bleeding." "I can't," Sam said. "I don't have insurance yet. New job. It doesn't kick in for another month." Aunt Sarah and Dancing Flower exchanged a look that Sam couldn't quite interpret. "Then you'll stay here on the reservation," Aunt Sarah said firmly. "There's a boarding house where visitors sometimes stay. Mrs. Redfeather runs it. You'll stay there tonight, and we'll keep an eye on you. If you show any signs of a serious concussion, confusion, vomiting, loss of consciousness, we'll take you to the hospital whether you can pay or not." "Understood?" Sam nodded, too tired and grateful to argue. Chapter 3. The Boarding House. The boarding house was a 2-story structure that had probably been grand once, maybe 50 or 60 years ago. Now it was simply well-maintained, its white paint fresh and its porch swept clean. Mrs. Redfeather was a woman in her 70s with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through Sam. "Dancing Flower vouches for you," she said, looking him up and down. "That's the only reason I'm letting you stay. We don't get many outsiders here, and when we do, they usually bring trouble." "I don't want any trouble," Sam said quietly. "I just need a place to stay until my car is fixed." Mrs. Redfeather studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Room's $20 a night, breakfast included, dinner's extra if you want it, no alcohol, no drugs, no guests after 9 o'clock. You break my rules, you're out. Clear?" "Crystal clear, ma'am." She showed him to a small room on the 2nd floor. It was simple but clean, with a single bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the reservation. Sam had stayed in far worse places during his time in the army. "Thank you," he said to Mrs. Redfeather. "I really appreciate this." She softened slightly. "Dancing Flower is a good judge of character. If she thinks you're worth helping, then I'll trust her judgment. But you step out of line, and you'll answer to me." Understood? Yes, ma'am. After Mrs. Redfeather left, Sam sat on the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands. What a disaster. He'd missed his meeting, wrecked his rental car, and was now stranded on a Native American reservation with no phone and no way to contact his employer. He'd probably be fired before he even really started the job. But, as he sat there in the quiet room, with the afternoon sun streaming through the window and the sounds of the reservation drifting up from below, Sam felt something unexpected. Relief. He was tired of pretending, tired of forcing enthusiasm for a job he didn't want, for a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. The army had given him purpose, structure, a sense of mission. Civilian life had given him nothing but a briefcase full of paper products and a growing sense of emptiness. There was a knock at the door, and Sam looked up to find Dancing Flower standing in the doorway, holding a tray. Mrs. Redfeather said you might be hungry, she said. I brought you some lunch. Nothing fancy, just a sandwich and some fruit. You didn't have to do that, Sam said. But he took the tray gratefully. He hadn't realized how hungry he was until he smelled the food. Dancing Flower lingered in the doorway, as if uncertain whether to stay or go. Sam gestured to the chair by the window. Would you like to sit? I mean, if you have time. I don't want to keep you from anything. She smiled and sat down, folding her hands in her lap. I have time. The diner is closed on Sunday afternoons. It's our slow day. Sam bit into the sandwich turkey and cheese with fresh vegetables and nearly groaned with pleasure. This is delicious. I made it, Dancing Flower said, and there was a hint of pride in her voice. I do most of the cooking at the diner. Uncle Joe owns it, but he can barely boil water without burning it. Sam laughed, and it felt good. When was the last time he'd laughed? He couldn't remember. So, Dancing Flower said, What brings you to Alabama, Sam Parker? Besides a wrong turn and a blown tire? Sam told her about the job, about leaving the army, about feeling lost and directionless. He told her more than he'd intended to, more than he'd told anyone since his discharge. There was something about Dancing Flower that made him want to open up. To be honest, in a way he hadn't been in months. She listened without interrupting, her dark eyes focused on his face. And when he finished, she was quiet for a moment. My brother felt the same way when he came back from Iraq, she finally said. He said the hardest part wasn't the combat or the danger. It was coming home and realizing that the world had kept turning without him, that everyone else had moved on with their lives while he'd been frozen in time. That's exactly it, Sam said, surprised by how well she understood. It's like I'm a stranger in my own life. Maybe you just haven't found the right life yet, Dancing Flower suggested. Maybe you're still looking. They talked for over an hour, and Sam found himself telling her things he'd never told anyone about his childhood in Ohio, about his parents' divorce when he was 12, about joining the army to escape a home that had never felt like home. Dancing Flower, in turn, told him about growing up on the reservation, about the traditions her grandmother had taught her, about the struggle to preserve Creek culture in a world that seemed determined to erase it. We're not supposed to exist, she said quietly. That's what they wanted, you know, when they forced us onto reservations, when they took our children and put them in boarding schools to civilize them, when they tried to make us forget our language and our customs. They wanted us to disappear. But we're still here. We're still Creek. We still remember. Sam heard the fierce pride in her voice, and he admired it. He'd spent his whole life not quite belonging anywhere, but Dancing Flower knew exactly who she was and where she came from. She was rooted in a way he'd never been. When she finally stood to leave, Sam felt a pang of disappointment. Thank you, he said. For everything. For helping me, for listening. I know I'm just some stranger who crashed his car, but you've been incredibly kind. Dancing Flower smiled. You're not a stranger anymore, Sam Parker. You're a guest of the Poarch Band of Creek Indians. That means something here. That means you're under our protection. After she left, Sam lay down on the bed, intending to rest for just a few minutes, but exhaustion and the lingering effects of his concussion pulled him under, and he slept deeply and dreamlessly until the next morning. Chapter 4. Complications. Sam woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. For a moment, he was disoriented, unsure of where he was. Then memory returned, the accident, the reservation, Dancing Flower. He sat up carefully, testing his head. It still ached, but the sharp, stabbing pain had dulled to a manageable throb. He made his way downstairs to find Mrs. Redfeather setting out breakfast in a small dining room. There were 2 other guests, an elderly couple who nodded politely at Sam but didn't speak. Sam helped himself to eggs, bacon, and toast, and was halfway through his meal when Dancing Flower appeared at the door. "Good morning," she said. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Sam replied honestly. "Still sore, but better." "Good. I talked to Jimmy at the garage. He can look at your car this morning, but—" She hesitated. "He says it's going to be bad. From what you described, the front end is pretty much destroyed, and the parts for a Kia Sportage he'll have to order them from Montgomery or maybe even Atlanta. It could take a week, maybe more." Sam's heart sank. A week? Maybe longer. And that's assuming the car is even worth fixing. Jimmy says it might be totaled. Sam put down his fork, his appetite suddenly gone. "I need to call my employer. Explain what happened. Do you have a phone I could use?" Dancing Flower pulled out her cell phone and handed it to him. Sam took it gratefully and stepped outside onto the porch for privacy. The call went about as well as he'd expected, which is to say, not well at all. His supervisor was sympathetic but firm. Sam had missed his first meeting, and the client had been furious. They'd given the account to another salesman. As for Sam's future with the company, well, they'd have to discuss that when he got back to Atlanta. In other words, he was probably fired. Sam handed the phone back to Dancing Flower with a rueful smile. "Well, that's that. I think I just lost my job." "I'm sorry," she said, and she sounded like she meant it. "Don't be. I hated that job anyway." Sam laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I just don't know what I'm going to do now. I can't afford to stay here for a week or more. I can barely afford the boarding house for a few days." Dancing Flower was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she said, "What if you worked for your room and board? Uncle Joe could use help at the diner. The dishwasher quit last week, and he's been doing it himself. He'd probably pay you a little too." Under the table, Sam looked at her in surprise. "You'd do that? Even though I'm an outsider?" "You're not an outsider anymore," Dancing Flower said, echoing her words from the day before. "You're a guest. And guests help out. That's how it works here." So Sam became a dishwasher at the reservation dinner. It was humbling work for a man who'd led soldiers in combat, but Sam found he didn't mind. There was something meditative about the hot water and soap, the rhythm of wash, rinse, dry, and it kept him close to Dancing Flower, who worked in the kitchen preparing meals. The other members of the community were less welcoming. Sam felt their eyes on him wherever he went, felt their suspicion and distrust. He understood it. He was an outsider, a white man on their land, and history had given them every reason to be wary. One afternoon, as Sam was taking out the trash, he overheard a conversation between 2 men standing by the gas pump. "I don't like it," one of them said. "That white boy hanging around, working at Joe's place. What's his angle? Why, Dancing Flower vouched for him, the other replied. You know she's got a good heart, but she's too trusting. Remember that guy from Mobile who came through last year? Said he wanted to learn about our culture, write a book. Turned out he was just looking for artifacts to steal and sell. Exactly. This Sam Parker, he's probably the same, just waiting for his chance. Sam's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He couldn't blame them for their suspicion. He'd have to earn their trust, if that was even possible. But earning their trust seemed less important than spending time with Dancing Flower. Over the next few days, as Sam waited for news about his car, he and Dancing Flower fell into an easy friendship. She would finish her shift at the diner, and they would walk together through the reservation, Dancing Flower pointing out landmarks and telling him stories. She showed him the old council house, where tribal meetings had been held for generations. She took him to the cemetery where her ancestors were buried, their graves marked with simple stones and offerings of tobacco and cornmeal. She told him about the green corn ceremony, the most important Creek ritual, which celebrated the new harvest and the renewal of life. We believe in balance, Dancing Flower explained as they sat by a small creek, watching the water flow over smooth stones. Balance between the physical and spiritual worlds, between the individual and the community, between taking from the earth and giving back. When that balance is disrupted, bad things happen. What kind of bad things? Sam asked. Illness, conflict, natural disasters. The world falls out of harmony. She picked up a stone and tossed it into the water, watching the ripples spread. My grandmother used to say that the white man's biggest mistake was thinking he could conquer nature instead of living in harmony with it. She said that's why your world is so troubled, because you've forgotten how to listen. Sam thought about that. He thought about Afghanistan, about the endless cycle of violence and retribution, about the way his own country seemed to be tearing itself apart. Maybe Dancing Flower's grandmother had been right. How do you learn to listen? He asked. Dancing Flower smiled. I could teach you. If you want to learn. I do, Sam said, and he meant it with an intensity that surprised him. Chapter 5. Learning to Listen. The next day, Dancing Flower took Sam to a field on the edge of the reservation. It was a wide, open space dotted with hay bales, and at the far end, someone had set up archery targets, circular boards with painted rings. This is where we practice, Dancing Flower said. Archery is an important part of Creek tradition. It's not just about hunting or warfare, it's about focus, discipline, respect for the weapon and the target. She opened the back of her truck and pulled out 2 bows and a quiver of arrows. The bows were beautiful, made of smooth wood with intricate carvings along the limbs. My uncle made these, Dancing Flower said, handing one to Sam. He's one of the few people left who knows the old ways of bow making. He uses Osage orange wood. It's strong and flexible, perfect for bows. Sam took the bow reverently, feeling the weight and balance of it. It was nothing like the compound bows he'd trained with in the army, all pulleys and sights and modern technology. This was simpler, more elegant, more honest. Dancing Flower showed him how to stand, how to knock the arrow, how to draw the string back to his cheek. Her hands were gentle as she adjusted his posture. And Sam found himself acutely aware of her proximity, of the warmth of her body and the scent of her hair, something floral and sweet. Don't think too much, she instructed. Feel the target. Become one with the arrow. Let it fly when it's ready, not when you decide it's ready. Sam tried, but his first arrow sailed wide, missing the target entirely. His second wasn't much better, but Dancing Flower was patient, correcting his form, encouraging him to relax, to breathe. By the end of the afternoon, Sam was hitting the target more often than not, and once, just once, he hit the bullseye. Dancing Flower let out a whoop of joy and threw her arms around him in celebration. Sam froze, surprised by the contact. And then slowly, carefully, he hugged her back. When she pulled away, her cheeks were flushed, and she wouldn't quite meet his eyes. "Sorry," she said. "I got carried away." "Don't apologize," Sam said softly. "I liked it." They stood there for a moment, the air between them charged with something unspoken. Then Dancing Flower cleared her throat and turned back to the targets. "We should practice some more," she said. "The tribal festival is in a few weeks. There's an archery competition. You should enter." "Me? I've been shooting for 1 day." "So, you're a natural. And it would show the community that you're serious about learning our ways, that you respect our traditions." Sam considered this. He'd felt the skepticism and suspicion from the other tribe members, and he understood it, but he also wanted to belong here, wanted to be accepted, and more than that, he wanted to make Dancing Flower proud. "Okay," he said. "I'll do it." They practiced together every afternoon after that. Sam's skills improved rapidly, his military training had given him discipline and focus, and Dancing Flower's patient instruction gave him technique. But more than the archery, Sam treasured the time with Dancing Flower. She was unlike anyone he'd ever met, strong and gentle, traditional and modern, serious and playful all at once. She told him stories as they practiced, stories her grandmother had told her, stories about Rabbit, the trickster, who was always getting into trouble, stories about the Wind Clan and the Bear Clan and the Bird Clan, and how each had their own responsibilities in maintaining the balance of the world. Stories about the time before the white man came, when the Creek Nation had been powerful and proud, stretching across what was now Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. "We called ourselves the Muskogee," Dancing Flower said. "Creek was a name the English gave us because we built our towns along creeks and rivers. But we are Muskogee. We are the people of one fire." Sam listened, absorbing every word, every story, every piece of history. He was learning more than archery, he was learning a worldview, a way of being that was completely foreign to his own upbringing, but that resonated with something deep inside him. Meanwhile, news about his car was not good. Jimmy at the garage had confirmed that the Kia Sportage was totaled. The rental company was furious, and Sam's insurance was going to take a hit. He'd have to pay a hefty deductible, and he still owed money on the rental. His financial situation was becoming dire. But strangely, Sam found he didn't care as much as he should have. Every morning, he woke up in the boarding house and felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. Every day, he worked at the diner, washing dishes, and helping Uncle Joe with odd jobs around the place. Every afternoon, he practiced archery with Dancing Flower. Every evening, he sat on the porch of the boarding house and watched the sun set over the reservation, feeling more at home than he'd ever felt in his life. The nightmares that had plagued him since Afghanistan began to fade, the constant tension in his shoulders, the hypervigilance that had made him scan every room for threats, the jumpiness at loud noises, all of it began to ease. He was healing here, in this place, with these people, with Dancing Flower. Chapter 6. The River. 2 weeks after his arrival on the reservation, Dancing Flower invited Sam to go fishing. "There's a spot on the river where my father used to take me," she said. "The fish practically jump into your boat." "Well, not really. But it's good fishing. Peaceful." They set out early in the morning, before the heat of the day set in. Dancing Flower drove them to a small dock, where an aluminum boat was tied up. They loaded their gear, fishing rods, a cooler with drinks and sandwiches, a tackle box, and pushed off into the slow-moving water. The river was beautiful in the morning light, the surface smooth as glass, reflecting the trees that lined the banks. Birds called from the branches. And somewhere in the distance, Sam heard the splash of a fish jumping. They found Dancing Flower's spot, a bend in the river where the water deepened and the current slowed and dropped anchor. For a while, they fished in comfortable silence. The only sounds, the gentle lapping of water against the boat, and the occasional whir of a reel. Sam caught the first fish, a decent-sized bass that put up a good fight. Dancing Flower cheered and helped him land it, and they admired it for a moment before releasing it back into the water. "We only keep what we need," Dancing Flower explained. "Take too much, and there won't be enough for next time. It's about balance, remember?" "Balance," Sam repeated. "I'm starting to understand that." As the morning wore on and the sun climbed higher, they put away their rods and just drifted, letting the current carry them slowly downstream. They talked about everything and nothing about Sam's childhood in Ohio, about Dancing Flower's dreams of becoming a teacher, about books they'd read and movies they'd seen and places they wanted to visit. "Have you ever left the reservation?" Sam asked. "A few times. I went to community college in Pensacola for 2 years, studied education, but I came back. This is where I belong." She trailed her hand in the water, watching the ripples. "Some people think that's limiting, that I should want more, but I have everything I need here. My family, my community, my culture. What more could I want?" Sam thought about his own life, about how he'd spent years searching for something he couldn't name, moving from place to place, never quite settling. "I envy you," he said quietly. "Knowing where you belong. I've never had that. It comes I've never had that." Dancing Flower looked at him, her dark eyes serious. "Maybe you just haven't found your place yet. Or maybe..." She hesitated. "Maybe you have, and you just don't realize it yet." Sam's heart began to beat faster. "What do you mean? What do you mean?" "I mean..." Dancing Flower looked away, suddenly shy. "I mean that you seem happy here, happier than when you first arrived. I've watched you change over the past 2 weeks. You smile more, you laugh, you seem lighter somehow." "I am," Sam admitted. "I feel more like myself here than I have in years, maybe ever." They drifted in silence for a moment, and then Dancing Flower said, "What will you do when your car is fixed? When it's time to leave?" It was the question Sam had been avoiding, the one he didn't want to answer because he didn't like any of the possible answers. He had no job to go back to, no apartment. He'd been living in a extended stay hotel in Atlanta. He had no ties, no obligations, nothing pulling him back to his old life, except that he couldn't stay here, could he? He wasn't Creek, he wasn't Native American at all. He was an outsider, a white man on a reservation where white men had historically brought nothing but trouble. What right did he have to stay? "I don't know," Sam said finally. "I honestly don't know." Dancing Flower turned to face him fully, and Sam saw something in her eyes that made his breath catch: hope, fear, longing, all mixed together. "Sam," she said softly, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about you. A lot. More than I should. Probably. And I know it's complicated, and I know there are 100 reasons why this is a bad idea, but She stopped, her eyes suddenly glistening with unshed tears. Sam felt something break open inside his chest. Something that had been locked away for so long, he'd forgotten it was there. Without thinking, without planning, he leaned forward and placed a sweet, tender kiss on her lips. Dancing Flower froze for just a moment, and then she kissed him back. The kiss deepened, became more intimate, more urgent. Sam cupped her face in his hands, feeling the softness of her skin, the warmth of her breath. Dancing Flower's fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that for days," he whispered. "Me too," Dancing Flower whispered back. They sat there in the boat, holding each other. As the river carried them slowly downstream, Sam felt something he hadn't felt since before Afghanistan. Something he'd thought was lost forever. He felt alive. Truly, completely alive. The world was no longer gray and muted. Colors were brighter, sounds were clearer, everything was more vivid, more real. Dancing Flower had done that. This place had done that. They had given him back his life. Chapter 7. Roots. After that day on the river, everything changed and nothing changed. Sam and Dancing Flower didn't announce their relationship. There was no dramatic declaration, no public display. But everyone seemed to know anyway. Mrs. Redfeather smiled knowingly when Dancing Flower came to visit Sam at the boarding house. Uncle Joe started giving Sam more responsibilities at the diner, teaching him how to cook some of the traditional Creek dishes. But not everyone was happy about the development. Sam continued to feel the suspicion and disapproval from some members of the community. One evening, as he was closing up the diner, an older man approached him. Sam recognized him as one of the tribal elders, a man named Thomas Fixico. "Mr. Parker," Thomas said, his voice formal and cold. "I'd like a word with you." "Of course," Sam said, setting down the broom he'd been using. Thomas looked at him for a long moment, his weathered face unreadable. "Dancing Flower is precious to this community. She is the granddaughter of one of our most respected elders. Her family has lived on this land for generations. Do you understand what I'm saying?" "I think so," Sam said carefully. "I don't think you do." Thomas's voice hardened. "We've seen your kind before. White men who come here, who take what they want, our land, our resources, our women, and then leave. They make promises they don't keep. They cause pain and disruption, and then they're gone, and we're left to pick up the pieces." Sam felt anger flare in his chest, but he forced it down. Thomas wasn't wrong. History was on his side. "I'm not like that," Sam said quietly. "I care about Dancing Flower. I would never hurt her." "You say that now. But what happens when you get bored? When the novelty wears off? When you remember that you have a whole world out there, and this reservation is just a tiny corner of it?" Thomas shook his head. "You'll leave. They always leave. And Dancing Flower will be heartbroken." "I don't want to leave," Sam said, and he realized as he said it that it was true. "I want to stay here. I want to build a life here." "You can't," Thomas said bluntly. "You're not Creek. You're not one of us. You never will be." The words hit Sam like a physical blow. He'd known it, of course, on some level, but hearing it said so plainly, so finally, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Thomas must have seen something in Sam's face because his expression softened slightly. "I don't say this to be cruel, Mr. Parker. I say it because it's the truth. You seem like a decent man. You've worked hard, you've been respectful, and Dancing Flower clearly cares for you. But caring isn't enough. This community has been through too much, lost too much. We protect our own, and you're not our own." After Thomas left, Sam sat alone in the dark diner, his mind churning. Was Thomas right? Was Sam fooling himself, thinking he could belong here? He'd felt so at peace, so at home. But maybe that was just an illusion. Maybe he was just a tourist, playing at being part of something he could never truly be part of. When Dancing Flower found him an hour later, still sitting in the dark. She knew immediately that something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked, sliding into the booth across from him. Sam told her about his conversation with Thomas. Dancing Flower listened, her expression growing more troubled with each word. "Thomas means well," she said when Sam finished. "He's trying to protect me, protect the community, but he's wrong about you." "Is he?" Sam asked. "I'm not Creek, Dancing Flower. I'm not Native American. I'm just some white guy who crashed his car and happened to land here. What right do I have to stay? What right do I have to be with you?" Dancing Flower reached across the table and took his hands in hers. "You have every right. Sam, do you know what my Creek name means?" "Dancing Flower. My grandmother gave it to me when I was born. She said I would bring joy and beauty to the world, that I would dance through life like a flower dances in the wind. But she also said I would know my own heart, that I would choose my own path." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I choose you. I choose us. And if the community can't accept that, then that's their problem, not ours." Sam wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that love was enough, that they could overcome the obstacles of history and culture and prejudice. But he'd seen too much of the world to be that naive. "I don't want to cause problems for you," he said. "I don't want to be the reason you're ostracized from your own community." "You won't be," Dancing Flower said firmly. "Give them time. Let them see who you really are. Let them see that you're serious about being here, about learning our ways, about respecting our culture. They'll come around. Most of them, anyway." Sam hoped she was right. Chapter 8. The Festival. The tribal festival arrived on a perfect September day, the heat of summer finally breaking into the crisp coolness of early autumn. The entire reservation seemed to come alive with activity. Booths were set up selling traditional crafts, beadwork, pottery, woven baskets. Food vendors offered fry bread, Indian tacos, and other Creek specialties. There was music and dancing, children running and playing, elders sitting in the shade and watching it all with satisfied smiles. Sam felt nervous as he approached the archery competition area. He'd been practicing for weeks, and Dancing Flower assured him he was ready, but he still felt like an imposter. What was he doing? Entering a Creek tribal competition? He wasn't Creek. He wasn't even a particularly good archer. But Dancing Flower had been so excited when he'd agreed to enter, and he didn't want to disappoint her. The competition drew a decent crowd. There were a dozen competitors, ranging from teenagers to men in their 60s. Sam recognized several of them from around the reservation men who'd given him suspicious looks or cold shoulders over the past few weeks. The rules were simple. Each archer would shoot 5 arrows at targets set at increasing distances. Points were awarded based on accuracy, with the bullseye worth the most points. The archer with the highest total score would win. Sam drew his bow, the one Dancing Flower's uncle had made, which she'd given him as a gift, and tried to calm his nerves. He thought about everything Dancing Flower had taught him. Don't think too much. Feel the target. Become one with the arrow. His first shot was good, not a bullseye, but close. His second was better. By his third shot, Sam had found his rhythm, and the nervousness faded away. There was only the bow, the arrow, the target. Everything else disappeared. When the competition ended, Sam was shocked to discover he'd placed first. He'd beaten every other archer, including several who'd been shooting since childhood. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some people cheered and congratulated him. Others looked displeased, even angry. Sam heard muttered comments. Beginner's luck. Probably cheated somehow. Outsider shouldn't even be allowed to compete. But then Dancing Flower was there, throwing her arms around him, her face radiant with joy and pride. "You did it! I knew you could!" And Uncle Joe was there, clapping him on the back. "Good shooting, Sam. Real good shooting." And Mrs. Redfeather was there, nodding approvingly. "You've earned this." The prize was a beautiful bow, even more ornate than the one Sam had been using, with intricate carvings of animals and symbols running along its length. As Sam accepted it, he looked out at the crowd and saw Thomas Fixico watching him. The elder's expression was unreadable, but he gave Sam a small nod, not quite approval, but perhaps a grudging respect. It was a start. That evening, there was a feast and more dancing. Sam sat with Dancing Flower and her family, feeling more accepted than he had since his arrival. Dancing Flower's Aunt Sarah was there, and her uncle who made bows, and several cousins whose names Sam was still trying to remember. They asked him about his life before the reservation, about his time in the army, about his plans for the future. Sam answered honestly, telling them that he didn't have plans, that he was taking things one day at a time, that he'd never felt more at home anywhere than he did here. Dancing Flower's uncle, whose name was Robert, studied Sam for a long moment. Then he said, "You shoot well. You work hard. You respect our ways. These are good things." "Thank you," Sam said. "But shooting a bow and washing dishes, these things don't make you Creek," Robert continued. "Being Creek is about more than skills or knowledge. It's about belonging to something larger than yourself. It's about responsibility to the community, to the land, to the ancestors who came before, and the children who will come after. Do you understand?" "I'm trying to," Sam said honestly. Robert nodded slowly. "That's all anyone can do. Try to understand. Try to do better. Try to live in balance." He paused. "My niece cares for you. That means something. But it also means you have a responsibility to her family, to her people. Don't take that lightly." "I won't," Sam promised. "I don't." As the evening wore on and the stars came out, Dancing Flower took Sam's hand and led him away from the crowd to a quiet spot at the edge of the festival grounds. They could still hear the music and laughter, but it was distant now, muted. "Thank you for today," Dancing Flower said. "For entering the competition. For trying so hard to fit in here. I know it's not easy." "It's worth it," Sam said. They kissed under the stars, and Sam felt a sense of rightness, of destiny almost. He'd crashed his car and ended up here by accident, but maybe it wasn't an accident at all. Maybe this was where he was always meant to be. Chapter 9. A New Path. The next morning, Sam woke with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in months. He'd made a decision during the night, lying awake in his room at the boarding house, listening to the sounds of the reservation settling into sleep. He was going to stay. Not just for a few more weeks until he figured out his next move. Not just until Dancing Flower got tired of him or the community forced him out. He was going to stay permanently, make a real life here, become part of this place in whatever way they would allow. But to do that, he needed a real job. Washing dishes at the diner was fine for temporary work, but it wasn't sustainable long term. He needed something more, something that would allow him to contribute to the community in a meaningful way. The answer came from an unexpected source. That afternoon, as Sam was taking his break at the diner, a man approached him. Sam recognized him as one of the managers from Wind Creek Casino, the same casino where Sam had stopped for lunch what felt like a lifetime ago. "You're Sam Parker, right?" the man said. "The guy who won the archery competition yesterday?" "That's me," Sam said cautiously. "I'm David Weaver. I manage security at Wind Creek." He held out his hand, and Sam shook it. "I heard about your background, Army. Combat experience. Leadership training. We're looking for security personnel. Good people are hard to find. You interested? Sam blinked in surprise. Yes. Yes. I'm interested. Good. Come by tomorrow morning. We'll do an interview, run a background check, the usual. If everything checks out, the job's yours. Pays decent, benefits are good, and it's steady work. After David left, Sam sat there in stunned silence. A real job. A real opportunity to stay. It felt like a sign. Like the universe was telling him he'd made the right decision. He told Dancing Flower that evening, and she was thrilled. This is wonderful. Wind Creek is a good employer. They treat their people well, and it means you can stay. If they hire me, Sam cautioned. If the background check comes back clean. If, Dancing Flower silenced him with a kiss. They'll hire you. I know they will. She was right. A week later, Sam started his new job as a security officer at Wind Creek Casino. The work was straightforward, monitoring the floor, dealing with the occasional drunk or belligerent customer, making sure everyone followed the rules. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and Sam was good at it. His military training served him well, and he quickly earned the respect of his colleagues and supervisors. With a steady income, Sam was able to move out of the boarding house and into a small apartment on the reservation. It wasn't much, just a one-bedroom place in a modest building, but it was his. He furnished it slowly, buying second-hand furniture and gradually making it feel like home. Dancing Flower helped him decorate, bringing over plants and artwork and small touches that made the space feel lived in. She spent more and more time there, and Sam spent more and more time at her place, a small house she shared with her Aunt Sarah. They fell into a comfortable rhythm, a domestic partnership that felt natural and right. Sam continued to learn about Creek culture and traditions. Dancing Flower taught him some basic words in the Muskogee language. Her Uncle Robert taught him how to make traditional bows and arrows. Aunt Sarah taught him about medicinal plants and traditional healing practices. Slowly, piece by piece, Sam was building a foundation of knowledge and understanding. But more than that, he was building relationships. He helped Uncle Joe repair the roof of the diner after a storm. He volunteered at the tribal school, teaching a class on physical fitness and self-defense. He attended community meetings and cultural events. He showed up, consistently and reliably, proving through his actions that he was committed to being part of this community. The skepticism didn't disappear overnight. There were still people who viewed him with suspicion, who questioned his motives, who thought he didn't belong. But gradually, slowly, attitudes began to shift. People started greeting him by name. They invited him to family gatherings. They asked his opinion on community matters. Sam was becoming part of the fabric of the reservation, thread by thread. Chapter 10. Warrior Wing. 6 months after his accident, Sam stood in the same field where Dancing Flower had first taught him to shoot a bow. But this time, he wasn't alone. The entire community had gathered, hundreds of people, young and old, filling the field with their presence. It had been Dancing Flower's idea, supported by her family and, surprisingly, by Thomas Fixico and the other tribal elders. They wanted to formally recognize Sam's commitment to the community, to acknowledge that he had proven himself worthy of acceptance. They were going to christen him into the tribe. Sam was nervous in a way he hadn't been since his first day of combat in Afghanistan. This meant everything to him: acceptance, belonging, a place to call home. If the ceremony went well, he would be given a Creek name, a formal recognition of his place in the community. If it went poorly, well, he tried not to think about that. Dancing Flower stood beside him, beautiful in her traditional dress, her hand warm in his. She squeezed his fingers reassuringly. "You've earned this," she whispered. "Don't doubt it." Thomas Fixico stepped forward, and the crowd fell silent. The elder wore ceremonial clothing, a ribbon shirt in deep blue, with intricate beadwork across the chest. He carried a staff carved with symbols Sam had learned to recognize. The spiral representing life's journey, the turtle representing wisdom, the eagle representing courage. "We gather today," Thomas began, his voice carrying across the field, "to welcome a new member into our community. Sam Parker came to us as a stranger, lost and injured. We could have turned him away. Some of us wanted to." He paused, and a few people in the crowd chuckled. But Dancing Flower saw something in him. She saw a good heart, a willing spirit, a man searching for his place in the world. Thomas turned to Sam. "You have worked hard these past months. You have learned our ways, respected our traditions, contributed to our community. You have proven yourself not just with words, but with actions. You have shown us that you are serious about being here, about being one of us." Sam felt his throat tighten with emotion. "In recognition of your commitment," Thomas continued, "and with the blessing of the Tribal Council and the support of this community, we offer you a place among us. We offer you a Creek name, a name that reflects who you are and who you are becoming." Thomas raised his staff. "From this day forward, you will be known as Warrior Wing. You are a warrior who has found his way home, who has spread his wings and chosen to land here, among us. You are Warrior Wing, and you are Creek." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Sam felt tears streaming down his face, and he didn't bother to wipe them away. Dancing Flower was crying too, her face radiant with joy. People came forward to congratulate him, to welcome him officially into the community. Uncle Joe embraced him like a son. Aunt Sarah kissed his cheek. Robert presented him with a new bow, even more beautiful than the one he'd won at the festival. Even some of the people who'd been most skeptical of him came forward to shake his hand and offer their acceptance. But the moment that meant the most was when Thomas Fixico approached him privately, after the ceremony had ended and the crowd had dispersed to the feast that had been prepared. "I was wrong about you," Thomas said simply. "I thought you would leave. I thought you were just passing through, that you would take what you wanted and go. But you stayed. You put in the work. You earned your place here." He held out his hand. "Welcome home, Warrior Wing." Sam shook his hand, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. That evening, as the sun set over the reservation, Sam and Dancing Flower sat together on the porch of his apartment. She was curled against his side, her head on his shoulder, and Sam had his arm around her, holding her close. "Warrior Wing," Dancing Flower said, testing out the name. "It suits you." "Warrior Wing, it suits you, does it?" Sam asked. You are a warrior, you've proven that. But you're also gentle, protective. You spread your wings and found your way here. Yes, it suits you perfectly." Sam kissed the top of her head. "I love you," he said. It was the first time he'd said the words out loud, though he'd felt them for months. Dancing Flower lifted her head to look at him, her eyes shining. "I love you too. I have for a long time." They kissed as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Sam felt a peace settle over him, a sense of completion. He'd spent so many years searching for something he couldn't name, moving from place to place, never quite fitting in anywhere. But he'd found it now. He'd found home. Not in a place, exactly, though the reservation had become dear to him. Not in a job, though he was grateful for his work at the casino. Not even in a culture, though he was honored to be learning Creek traditions and ways. He'd found home in Dancing Flower, in her smile, her laugh, her gentle wisdom, in the way she'd seen past his wounds and his walls to the man he could be, in the way she'd welcomed him, taught him, loved him, and he'd found home in himself, in the man he'd become through his time here, in the peace he'd found after years of war, both external and internal, in the purpose he'd discovered in being part of something larger than himself. Sam Parker Warrior Wing had crashed his car and ended up on the Poarch Band of Creek Indian Reservation by accident. But staying had been a choice. Loving Dancing Flower had been a choice. Building a life here had been a choice. And he would choose it again, every single day, for the rest of his life. Epilogue. Full circle. 1 year later, Sam stood in the same field where he'd been christened into the tribe. But this time he was competing in the archery competition again. He'd defended his title successfully, winning for the second year in a row, and the crowd's reaction was completely different from the first time. Now they cheered for him without reservation. Now they called him by his Creek name. Now he was one of them, fully and completely. After the competition, Sam found Dancing Flower waiting for him, as she always was. But this time, he had something to ask her. Something he'd been planning for months. He took her hand and led her to a quiet spot, away from the crowd. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and Sam thought he'd never seen anything more beautiful than Dancing Flower in that golden light. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a ring, simple silver with a small turquoise stone, made by a Creek artisan on the reservation. It wasn't expensive or flashy, but it was perfect. "Dancing Flower," Sam said, his voice shaking slightly with emotion. "You saved my life. Not just that first day when you found me in the diner, but every day since. You showed me who I could be. You gave me a home, a purpose, a reason to keep going. You gave me love." Tears were already streaming down Dancing Flower's face. "I know I'm not Creek by birth," Sam continued. "I know I came here as an outsider. But you and this community have made me one of you. You've given me a place to belong. And I want to spend the rest of my life earning that gift, honoring it, living up to it. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." He dropped to one knee. "Will you marry me?" Dancing Flower didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, yes, yes." Sam slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. They kissed as the sun set over the reservation, over their home, over the place where Sam had crashed his car and found his destiny. The wedding took place 3 months later, a blend of Creek traditions and modern customs. Sam wore traditional Creek clothing, and Dancing Flower was breathtaking in a white dress decorated with intricate beadwork. The ceremony was held outdoors, with the entire community in attendance. Thomas Fixico officiated, speaking about the importance of balance, of two people coming together to create something stronger than either could be alone. Uncle Joe cried openly. Aunt Sarah beamed with pride. Robert presented them with a pair of matching bows, symbolizing their partnership, and as Sam and Dancing Flower exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their lives, Sam thought about the journey that had brought him here. The wrong turn, the blown tire, the accident that had seemed like a disaster but had actually been a blessing. He thought about the man he'd been a year ago, lost, directionless, haunted by his past and uncertain about his future. And he thought about the man he was now, Warrior Wing, husband to Dancing Flower, member of the Poarch Band of Creek Indians, a man who had finally found his place in the world. Sometimes, Sam reflected, you have to get completely lost before you can find your way home. Sometimes you have to crash before you can fly. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that ever happened to you. As he kissed his wife for the first time as a married couple, as the community cheered and celebrated around them, Sam sent up a silent prayer of gratitude. Gratitude for the accident that had brought him here. Gratitude for Dancing Flower's kindness and love. Gratitude for a community that had welcomed him despite their history of being betrayed by people who looked like him. Gratitude for second chances and new beginnings. Sam Parker had come to the reservation as a stranger, a white man with no connection to Creek culture or history, but he was leaving this ceremony as a Warrior Wing member, a member of the tribe, a man who had found his purpose and his peace. He had found his home. He had found his love, he had found himself, and he would spend the rest of his life honoring that gift, living in balance, contributing to his community, and loving the woman who had saved him in every way a person can be saved. The sun set over the reservation, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and Sam and Dancing Flower walked hand in hand into their future, together. Home at last. I hope you liked this story. Be sure to like and subscribe to SKO's Media YouTube channel for more stories and songs by Sylvester SKO Fourroux.